Hey, what's up everybody? Anthony here with the Silver Screen Analysis, and today we have another episode of the Film Face-Off where we just break down two versions of a movie to see if the original work remains supreme or if the remake is able to surpass the source material. These films will be ranked out of 5 stars on storyline, writing, cast performances, direction and cinematography, and the sound and visual effects, and from there we will tally up the results and see what version is victorious. So let's get into it. Today we have a fun matchup between the 1974 Charles Bronson-led Death Wish and the recent 2018 remake led by Bruce Willis. Let's go over the tale of the tape on these two movies. Both, of course, are based on the Death Wish novel from Brian Garfield about a law-abiding man that takes matters into his own hands, becoming a vigilante for justice once his family is attacked. The 1974 Death Wish was directed by Michael Winner, and it currently sits at 7.0 on IMDb with a critic score of 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. The 2018 Death Wish is directed by Eli Roth, and it has a 6.7 on IMDb with a critic score of 17% on Rotten Tomatoes as of the time of the filming of this video. So let's break down these films, first starting with the storylines. There are some similarities between these two narratives, but I feel the original was much more, unique for a traditional vigilante justice movie. In the 74 storyline, Paul Kersey is reeling from his family's attack, and I felt his path to ultimately killing criminals just felt much more natural and realistic. This path in the remake was a lot more formulaic, as Bruce Willis's Paul Kersey is much more revenge focused, with a storyline that conveniently lets him get on the trail of his family's attackers to exact vengeance more than standard vigilante justice. It also really focuses too much on the media element of the plot. In the original, Kersey saw a city filled with crime, so he simply put himself in a position to just be a target. He never killed a man that wasn't already attacking him, and I thought this element of pure self-defense was really what helped make this script stand up so well over all the years. In the remake, there are some quickly laid out plot conveniences that lead Kersey to street vengeance. You have a kid that's being bullied that needs some justice, a patient in the hospital drops his gun for Kersey to find. Many things really fall into place to maneuver him into becoming a killer, missing that internal morality that I think was so excellently captured in the original. The 74 film was much more subtle. It was a slow burning crime thriller that really explored the main character more than it sold the violence. The remake was flashier, more action focused, with a faster pace but also a rather formulaic feel to the progression of the story overall. So when it comes to the storyline, I think the original takes the category with 4 out of 5 stars, with the recent remake getting 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, let's talk about the cast performances. This was a tough category. Both Willis and Bronson have extensive resumes. The late Charles Bronson was really a force in the industry from the 60s up into the early 80s. Bruce Willis has seemed to kind of mail it in over the past decade in terms of effort and quality of roles overall, but you can't take away his collection of hits. Charles Bronson as Paul Kersey was a very stoic character. He almost had an aw shucks demeanor at times that I think kind of felt out of place, but it did kind of fit the character at the same time. I kept having to remind myself that I wasn't looking at the tough, badass Charles Bronson, and I had to focus on a businessman in mourning that was Paul Kersey. I do think Bruce Willis brought some effort to this role. He clearly had looked over the past films to build a version of the character that was both fitting to the current day as well as his own personality. I definitely think there were times he felt like Willis, and there was times he felt like John McClane from Die Hard, but I think for the most part he was Paul Kersey. Charles Bronson, though, was really able to capture the inner conflict, the overall uneasiness, Kersey's moral dilemma, and an overall wider range of emotion for the character than I think Willis did. I felt while Willis did try to capture some of the more emotionally driven moments, overall he kind of felt more like an actor playing a movie character than he did a normal guy. So this category is going to the original with 4 out of 5 stars, with the remake getting 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, let's move on to the writing. The remake wasn't a bad film at all, and I actually had some fun with it, but I also felt like it lacked a lot of focus that the original had and maybe tried to do a little bit too much. The original was a much more focused crime drama with stronger development and focus on the characters, while the remake really sped up that angle of the story to spend much more time on the vigilante angle and its exposure in the media. The original developed the character much more. It spent much more time setting up how Kersey's life would pull him into a position where he would ultimately kill criminals. I thought it was unique that they didn't have Kersey stumble into his family's attackers, which made the story just that much more grounded and ultimately more realistic. I will credit the remake with bringing a little bit more charm to the film overall with certain elements of the dialogue, but it was also very bland dialogue at times. The interactions between the characters felt a little bit too generic and just lacking both personality and overall genuine emotion. I just feel the original created a much more natural character that you can connect with and relate to. He doesn't adjust to his new life as quickly as he does in the remake, and I think it resulted resulted in a much lesser of a connection to that version of the character, regardless of Willis delivering a couple of solid lines and having some moments of good charm. The remake just tried to add way too much. It incorporated too much of the media element as the subplot, and I do kind of understand it for trying to bring the source material into current times, but it just made the film come off as trying to stir up some social commentary as well as trying to promote violence when it should have just focused on being an action thriller. So this category goes to the original once again, taking 4 out of 5 stars, with the remake getting 2 out of 5 stars. Now let's move on to the direction and cinematography. With this category, you do have to take into account the time period of each film. The era of movies in the 70s was much different than it is today, and technology has made many great advancements. I do think the original was a very well shot film for the time period. It was simplistic with a blend of stationary camera angles and more methodical panning shots. The darkness of the city was captured with a really strong use of lighting and shadows to give it that needed ominous tone. The film really does have a cold, gritty vibe, and it was because of the subtle but effective direction from Michael Winner. As for the remake, Eli Roth did manage to leave his imprint with stark bursts of violence, but it wasn't gratuitous at all. I did kind of feel like it was almost paying homage to the franchise as a whole at times. I thought the direction and visual flair was a little bit on the traditional side for the genre, but it was polished. It just kind of felt like it was lacking that gritty tone that the original had, and it felt too much like a clean Hollywood crime thriller. So overall, this category was a push for me, with both films getting 3 out of 5 stars. And now for the final category, let's talk about the sound and visual effects. I do think the original film is a great crime drama with tense moments woven perfectly into the storyline, but it didn't seem like a movie that spent a lot of attention on the violence, or at least capturing the violence of the narrative in a very suspenseful fashion. I know 1974 was a long time ago, makeup and visual effects have come a long way since then, but it just still felt lacking in that department, with a lot of simple gunshots, unrealistic blood effects, and very noticeable editing cuts. This is where I think the remake really shines, in my opinion, with some quality visuals to capture the violence of the narrative in an enjoyable fashion. The action sequences in the remake weren't overly ambitious, but I thought they were well done. They added nice splashes of violence to the story to keep the pace moving. There were some fun shootouts that land with a nice impact as Willis really comes into his own as his vigilante status, and it's entertaining despite a overly formulaic third act. So this category goes to the remake with 3 out of 5 stars, with the original getting 2 out of 5 stars, and that means our winner in the Death Wish film face-off is the 1974 original, getting 17 out of 25 stars, with the remake getting 14 out of 25. It was a close matchup, but the original takes the victory again. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I definitely appreciate it. I'm Anthony. This has been another Film Face-Off, and I'll see you at the movies.